Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the ins and outs of grading with Civil 3D webinar. Before we start, let's get into a little bit of logistics. The lines are going to be muted so that we can hear well the presentation. The webinar is going to be recorded. And if you please have questions, this is the time to ask. Write it in the chat box and we will either answer along the way if they are like licensing wise or something like that, or they would be answered at the end if it's content. Without any more delays, let me introduce you to Seth, our Civil 3D Technical Specialist and Trainer. He's an expert in Autodesk infrastructure software like Civil 3D, Map 3D, InfraWorks, vehicle tracking, and very experienced. Seth, take it away.
Thank you, Raquel, and welcome, everybody. All right, so today we're going to talk about, I'm going to try and get to, within the hour, kind of the guts of everything as it relates to grading. We'll talk about grading objects. We'll talk about feature lines. We'll talk about criteria. And then I also want to kind of get into actual examples. So I'll go over like how to do actual grading examples that I've encountered in the past, and just through work and stuff like that. And then, of course, afterwards, we'll answer any questions. I'll do a little bit of PowerPoint here just to kind of set the stage for what we're going to discuss and set the agenda. The first thing I want to do is I want to discuss just grading in general. So if you look at the picture on your screen, there are, it points to the different kind of parts of grading and so on. So, you can kind of see here from this spot right here, the key thing when to do any kind of grading is you actually have to start with a feature line. Even if you don't do, if you're not going to be doing any kind of, if you're just doing feature lines, then of course you don't need grading objects. But this example here shows grading objects. But to start getting this done, you actually have to have a source feature line. From there, you'll see there are some examples here. This is a pond, obviously. This is a fill slope. This is a cut slope. This is your target surface. These grading objects or these feature lines here, as well as this berm here, and this infill are all basically dynamically linked to the source feature line. That's the beauty, as if you've used Civil 3D, of course, with everything in Civil 3D, is you kind of start with something, and any other aspects of the design are usually linked to the other kind of objects that you kind of started with, okay? So the first thing I want to we'll discuss is just understanding sites, because the way that grading works, and again, this is even if you just do feature lines and you're not doing any kind of grading objects at all. You want to have a good understanding of sites, and we'll talk about some example of some examples of using sites and how you can kind of leverage some of the functionality that happens when you put feature lines in sites. And then we'll of course touch on grading styles, grading criteria, and feature line styles, and all that good stuff. But let's just jump right in here and let's talk about that. So the first thing I want to talk about is sites. So as you can see here in the Prospector tab of the tool space, here's where you have the actual sites category. And right now I've got no sites in here. So of course, as with anything in the tool space, if you're familiar with it, when in doubt, just right click on it. And we'll just create a brand new site here. And I'll just call this demo, just to kind of, show you some examples of kind of what you want to do with sites and so on. All right. I'll just start with that. And now basically when you create a site, you get these other subcategories: alignments, feature lines, grading groups, and parcels. So a good definition of a site is basically it's a container of geometry, and all that geometry talks to each other. So if you create parcels with feature lines, they're going to all talk to each other. If you create grading groups with feature lines, they're going to all talk to each other. And a good example of that would be just to kind of show you just some of the things right here. I'll just draw a really basic kind of feature line. So to create feature lines, you go to the Home tab in the ribbon, and everything in kind of Civil 3D world as far as creating new stuff is in this Create Design panel. And we'll go to feature line. As you can see, there are many options to creating feature lines. You can create a feature line from scratch, which I'm going to do here in a second. You can create one from an existing object. You can create feature lines from alignments, from a quarter, or from stepped offset, which is basically it's offset on steroids, which I'm going to go over that in one of the examples I have here. I'll just create a feature line from scratch here, and I'm just going to basically put it into my site. So right here, you have the ability to either make a siteless feature line, where feature lines don't talk to each other at all, which that's up to you. If you want to do that in your design, go right ahead. But if you do want them to talk to each other, you have to put them in the same site. So I'll just put it into demo. You don't have to give them a name. Sometimes you will, just because it helps better kind of understand what's kind of going on in the world of your design. And of course, if you do stuff with actual quarter modeling, which we're not really going to get into in this presentation, you actually have to name your feature lines. All right. I'll just go with a basic style here. We'll go over styles in a second here, and I'll just click OK here. All right, so again, when you don't know what to do, as I always say, look to the command line window. So it's asking you right here to specify a start point. So I'm just going to click out here in space. Again, when you don't know what to do, look to the command line window. It's saying specify elevation or surface. So you have the ability right now to drape it to a surface, which I don't have one in this location. So I'm just going to give this an elevation of 500. When I press enter, I look at the command line window again, and it says specify the next point, or I can actually start an arc. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and click in space here. And now this says specify grade, or I can define all kinds of different ways of getting to the elevation of this next point. So I want to actually make this the same elevation. So I'll type E space bar, and I'll just type 500 is already in there. I'll just press enter. And now I have a feature line that's actually at 500 feet. And you can kind of see it right there, right up in space. One of the other little tips I like to do when I do grading is I always have two viewports open. This is a really nice functionality in that this one I put in 2D, this one I put in 3D. The way the way that you get this in 3D is you can do it a couple ways. You can click the view cube right here. Any corner or face of the view cube, it'll automatically rotate it to that view's orientation. Or if you hold the shift key down and then hold the middle mouse button down like you're panning, you can rotate the view in 3D. So this is a nice way to kind of rotate the view to see exactly how things are kind of looking. All right, I'm going to go ahead and draw another feature line from scratch, but I'm going to put this at an elevation of 300. And I'm going to show you why I'm doing this in a second, because basically feature lines, like I said, talk to each other. And the way it works is last one wins. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of click in space here. I'll give this an elevation of 300. I'll click over here, and I'll give this an elevation of 300 as well. And as you can see in the other view, it now has taken this one here and basically made it go down to 300. Okay, at that point right there. These points are still at 500, but that's what's kind of happening in here. And that's why I wanted to show this to you, is that you really want to have a good understanding of sites, because everything that's in the same site will talk to each other. Here's the other kind of thing that happens as well. If I go ahead and select this one now, and I just do a simple grip edit, and I'll just move this over here, now that one wins, and now the 300 now has this other additional vertex in there. Now there's no additional vertex in there. It's just basically popping it up there because it crosses that. And the theory is, and it makes total sense, you can't have crossing break lines in a surface that have different elevations. You just can't. Yes, you can have like a bridge underneath a road. That would be a whole nother surface, right? That would not be they would not be in the same exact road surface. Okay. So that's basically the theory of that, and that's the concept. Now, I'm doing an exaggeratory kind of example here. Where it gets really tricky is if you do this and you have like curbing, or you have basically feature lines that kind of intersect at different locations, you want to be just aware of that one's either winning over the other one, or you just move it to a totally new site. So if I were to do that, I could basically select this one here, and I'll go ahead and right click and move to site. And basically I'll just create a brand new one, call this demo 2. And as soon as I do that, you'll notice it is gone and it no longer talks to that other one. All right, what I have a lot of users do is, especially if they're just doing kind of basic grading with feature lines, they'll actually move these to a siteless, basically feature line, so that they don't talk to anything at all. So I can click on move to site here, and whoops, let me do that again. I'll just pick one at a time here. If you don't want it to be in any site, just right click, move to site, and then you can say none, and then click OK. And now it's not in the site at all. In fact, if I were to, expand these sites here, you'll see that in demo, there's nothing right over here, but in feature lines, the feature lines collection, it shows you that feature line that I just moved. All right. So that's basically kind of how you want to understand feature lines and sites and all that good stuff. I'm going to go ahead and just delete these, as I don't need to work with them anymore. And I will delete this site here as well, and this one as well. One of the things about working with grading objects you may have heard or seen on forums, et cetera, grading and feature lines, mostly grading groups, but it can, I want to say it's much better, but they can sometimes act a little hokey, where things kind of start to act kind of weird in your drawing. What I recommend you do is run an audit often as you're doing grading, and then also save often, because sometimes if you do a really complicated drawing, it will crash, or complicated grading, sorry, it will crash. So just save often as you kind of make minor edits to your grading objects. All right, let's talk about the styles and settings and all that good stuff as it relates to grading. So again, in the Prospector tab, settings, the tool space settings tab here, this is where you find the criteria and the styles related to grading. So under the general category, and then we have multi-purpose styles, this is where you will find feature line styles. Okay, so basically how a feature line should look is going to be defined, as with everything in Civil 3D, with a style here. And what I recommend you do is I recommend you make as many feature line styles as you need to do design as well as plotting, because you may want to have feature lines that you plot. And then you're going to have feature lines that you use just for grading. They don't need to plot. So you can have ones for like grading a ditch or grading daylight, etc. Or I have this really simple one here that's called plot, and it puts it on basically a plot layer so that it'll just plot them. And again, you can change the feature line properties after the fact to be on the correct ones that you want them to be. Again, really straightforward. With anything pretty much with the style, you just right click here and go to edit. And then in the display tab, you tell it what layer you want it to go on and all that good stuff. All right. All right, let's talk about grading criteria. So if you scroll down here, you'll notice that there is a grading category, and this is how the grading styles will appear, as well as the grading criteria that we were going to go through and discuss today. Okay, so any of that kind of information or any of those settings are done right through here. Okay, I'm not going to go into great detail with them, but this is how you define what they should look like, what layer they should go on, should they plot, and so on. All right, so that's where basically all that information is here. All right, so let's kind of talk about grading objects and just actually how to create them. As I said, you always have to start with the source feature line here. In this picture here, you kind of see an example. Again, this could be a corridor model, but you can also do it with grading. So you'll notice here I've got a source feature line, which is the top of curb here. And then I've created a curbing criteria down below here. I have a sidewalk criteria. So grading can be basically anything that you want it to kind of be. You can also add transitions. I'm not going to go through the example here with in this demo or in this webinar, but it does do it automatically for you. So as you can see in this picture here, I created a grading here initially that was at a 2% grade. This was at a 6% grade, and you basically just click create transition. You pick the 2, it automatically would transition that from -6 to -2%. So grading can kind of do that. It does have that functionality. All right. Grading objects. When we talk about grading, we'll talk about something called an infill. Basically, as you can see here, this is before I put the infill. As you create your grading objects, if you don't create an infill, your surface will actually look like this. So if you're doing volume calculations or doing contours for, let's say, just a site plan, it will not show through here. So you want to make sure you create the infill. And we'll go over these examples as well. All right. Of course, after you create a grading object, the goal is to kind of have a surface, because you might want to get contours, or you might want to get a finished ground surface for visualization, or you want to get quantities and so on. So you can, of course, create a surface out of grading objects. And of course, feature lines. Feature lines are basically a really robust kind of line type. They're like polylines on steroids, where that you can basically define slopes for them. You can set grade slope between them. You can add elevation points. You can drape them to a surface. We're going to go over a couple of examples here just so you get an idea of how you can leverage feature lines and so on. Editing feature lines is a really pretty easy functionality. You basically select the feature line first, and then the ribbon updates with all the tools that would be available to you. And of course, I'll demonstrate that when we go over some of the examples here. One of my favorite tools, as you can see here, I say awesome. This quick elevation tool, you will find it's one of the best tools ever. You can just quickly edit something, like a point, or edit a grade of between 2 points. It's a really nice functionality of feature lines. All right, so let's just kind of dive right in and spend the rest of the time here. I like to do stuff actually doing it. So, and as we go through that, I'll kind of describe what I'm doing, going through the process. The first example here is I'll just do a basic ditch. Let's say I have I need to create a swale, and I don't need anything spectacular. I just want to kind of do a 2-foot ditch from existing ground, and I just want to get it in there. Now, a lot of people would say, well, that's a corridor model, and it could be. Sure, you could do a really basic, assembly with a trench excavation and daylighting. But sometimes you can actually just do a grading object, and it's very simple to do that. All right, let's kind of go over that example right now. All right, so basically what I have here, and again, you'll see this in my 2D and my 3D. So right here, we're seeing the surface in the tin. I'm not visualizing it yet or putting any kind of style yet. I just want to kind of leave it in wireframe. And then over here, I've just got where I want my ditch to go. And this is just a 2D line. You can kind of see it right here. If I go ahead and select this, a little trick here, I use this constantly. If you don't have this turned on, right here are your coordinates. I love, just as a quick way to see what an elevation is, what I can do is just look to my coordinates in the status bar. If this is not turned on, navigate to what they call the hamburger right here. All right. And if you scroll to the top here, coordinates is at the top. So just kind of toggle that on. What I love about this functionality is, especially when you do grading, is if I want to know the elevation of something without having to kind of interrogate the object, I can simply select it. And then I can, in any one of these views, I can hover over the grip and keep an eye on the bottom here, right over here. This is the X, Y, and Z. The second I actually hover over a grip, it'll actually show you what the Z is. Now, of course, this is at 0, so it's actually at 0. But here's another little trick. If, let's say, I want to see what a quick contour is, I'll just start the line command. Now, keep an eye on the bottom right over here. All right, so keep an eye on this right here. And if I snap anywhere along here, notice how it shows me the elevation immediately. And that I really like, is that I can just quickly just start any command that requires you snap, like the line command, and basically it shows the elevation right off the bat. All right, it's a nice, quick, easy way to just kind of see what an elevation is. So I want to make a ditch out of this, a 2-foot swale. All right, so all I'll do here is, the first thing I'll do is I'll go to the Home tab, Feature Line, and I'll go ahead and create a feature line from Objects. All right, again, when you don't know what to do, look to the command line window. This is a polyline, so I can pick it from the drawing. So I'll go ahead and select it, press Enter. And of course, if I want this to be in something that makes sense, I will make a site here. In fact, let's just create a brand new one. We'll create a brand new one, and we'll call this one Ditch. And I'll click OK here. And I don't have to give this a name, but sometimes it's nice to just do a quick little DB like ditch bottom, etc. Do I want to plot this? I can have a plotting one right there, but I'm not going to plot this one. But I have this other one here, a feature line style called by block. What's nice about it is whenever I change, it's set up so that whenever I change this feature line to, it matches the active layer's properties, which I kind of like that. So I make this one here called by block. I'm going to erase the existing entity. I don't need it anymore. And I want to assign elevations. Basically, I want to drape this to existing, drop it 2 feet, and then make my ditch. So I'll go ahead and click OK here. And as you can see here, I have the ability to actually give it an elevation if I wanted to, which we'll do that later on with the pond. But from here, I'm going to say from surface, I want to drape it to the existing ground. This toggle right here, it says insert intermediate grade breakpoints. Basically, what that means is this line, this polyline, only has 1, 2, 3, 4 vertices. If I didn't have that toggled on, it would simply drape those 4 vertices to the existing ground elevation. Is that realistic? The answer is no. I want this thing to drape all the way along the entire surface. So basically what's going to happen when you toggle this on, wherever there is a triangle leg, it will insert an elevation point for that feature line. So if you have a really dense surface, you might get a lot of elevation points, and that's fine if that's what you want to kind of work with. This last toggle here is something new that was added, I think, in 18, if I remember correctly. This is a relative elevation to surface. This is very useful for proposed type feature lines. I mean, it can be used for existing as well if you want to keep them existing, but it's rare that your existing ground changes. But the purpose of this is it basically will allow you to lock in the elevation as it relates to another surface. So I could say, hey, my top of curb feature line should always be 6 inches above my proposed surface. I don't have to worry about modeling that. I can basically just do a stepped offset, which like by 0.01, and I can get myself a top of curb by simply adding 0.5 to this and drape it to the other surface, which would be my proposed surface. I'm not going to do that with this one, but that's a nice little feature. We'll just click OK here and keep an eye in the 3D view. And as you can see right here, it is now draped right on my existing ground. So wherever there's a triangle leg, as like I said, if I go ahead and select this, you'll see that it basically added a elevation point. And you can see it in the plan view as well, right? So that's what's going on. It's just basically draping right across that. All right, now I'm just going to go ahead and just start doing this. I'm going to mess up on purpose because I like to make mistakes. That way because obviously, we all make mistakes, but it's nice to know how to actually troubleshoot them or fix them. So I'm just going to basically just start doing my ditch here. So again, this is actually now in a site. So what I have to now do, and I can do this a couple of ways, is I'm going to expand ditch. I do not have a grading group just yet. So I'm going to actually make one right here. I'll just go ahead and right click on this and say new. I'll call this ditch. I don't say never. I pretty much wait to turn on the surface creation after I'm done my grading because it's just an extra resource that has to be rebuilt every time I update my grading object. So I'll just go ahead and click OK here. And whoops, that should have shown up. Did that not do it? Let's say new. and click OK. Okay, that's kind of weird. We'll just go through the grading. Maybe there's something going on here. All right, so we'll go to Grading Creation Tools. Is there a question, Raquel? I noticed you came off mute. No? Okay.
Hello?
I'll go ahead and click on Set the Grading Group, and we'll go on Ditch here, and I'll just click on New here. I already did this, but let's see what's going on. Whoops, supposed to be spelled correctly. We'll say Ditch, click OK here. That's acting a little funny. So, like I said, sometimes grading does act a little hokey. Let me run an audit here real quick. See if that fixes anything here. And let's try that one more time. Worst case, I will just create a brand new grading group, a brand new site. Okay, that does not want to act right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create actually I have a new site here. Let's just actually do that. We'll actually move this to site 1. So I'll click on Move to Site, and we'll move this to site 1. Click OK. Now that's in there. Let's see if we can get this one to create a ditch grading group. All right, I do not know why that's happening. Let's see. If we go to site here, click that. Huh. All right. Doesn't want me to let me do this here. Let's try this one more time. I'm going to exit and come back in a second here. All right, so we'll go here and create a new one. Huh. All right. Well, it's letting me do that one. So let's actually. Maybe that's what it is. There we go. All right, so we'll move this to that one there. All right, so we'll move this to the site 2 because that has that grading group that's working. All right, now let's go to grading here. All right, so here's where you see the grading group you're using. Here's where you see the surface that it will target when you eventually target. But the first thing I'm going to do is I just want to do a grade to distance here. So we'll click grade to distance, and we'll click on this drop down right over here, and we'll click on create grading. Again, when you don't know what to do, look to the command line window, select the feature. So I want to pick the feature line right there. It warns me that there's a lot of vertices in here, elevation points, and it says, hey, do you want to weed that out? I do not. I want it to be exactly like it's supposed to be. So I'll just click continue without weeding them. And then, again, it looks at the command line window. It's asking you which side you want to go to. So I'll go ahead and click on the side. I want to do the entire length in this case, so I'll say yes. And then what distance do I want? So this is a 2-foot ditch, or 2-foot wide ditch. So I'll just do a 1 foot on one side. And then what slope do I want? I'll pick slope here. Now, one of the little tricks here, if you do pick slope, all right, you can't type 0. It's kind of a weird thing. But what you can do is you can see right there, I typed this in already, but you can type in horizontal, and that will actually draw a flat line in there. All right. All right, well, it should have. Let's do this here real quick. There we go. All right. And so now I'll actually do the other side, but in this case, when I do the other side here, I'll just pick here, we'll pick the feature line, we'll pick this side, I'll say yes, but what I'll do is I will actually do the grade. If you type G for grade, you can actually type 0 then, and that, for whatever reason, that works there, but it doesn't work with the slope option. All right, now I want to daylight up to my existing ground, so we'll go ahead and just daylight up to existing ground. We'll pick here, we'll go to grade to surface, and we'll click that. We'll pick the outside here. Yes, I want to do the entire length. I want to go to slope of 4:1 for cut and a slope of 4:1 for fill. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. And of course, if you're probably saying, Seth, there's something going on here. You haven't done anything. You haven't done the proper thing yet. I'll explain that in a second. Basically, that feature line is just draped to existing ground, right? I haven't made any depth to that feature line. Well, I did that on purpose. Sometimes we forget to do stuff, right? So, and that's quite all right. So what I'm going to do here, let me close this out. Is the great thing about the feature line tools is that all you have, once you make it, I see this happen all the time. Someone will do a feature line and they say, oh, I messed up. I'm going to use regular AutoCAD to just draw it again. You don't have to do that ever. There are tools within Civil 3D that allow you to edit your feature lines very well. So I'm going to go ahead and select the feature line. When you do so, this is what you'll get. Now, you may get this the first time you do it, where you don't see these additional tools here. What you do is you toggle on Edit Geometry. You'll get the Edit Geometry panel. you toggle on edit elevations, you get the edit elevations panel. And again, it's very logical. What do I want to do? Well, right now, I want to lower this by 2 feet. So that's an elevational type tool. So if I look at the edit elevations panel, you'll see here there's a raise lower. So I'll click on that. And again, when you don't know what to do, look to the command line window. It's saying specify elevation difference. Well, obviously, if I type 2, it's going to go up. I want to type -2 to go down. And now, as you can see here, it's going to basically update everything automatically. Now, that's okay, but as obviously it's not a very, you're not going to have this really sharp of a ditch here. So I actually need to add some curves. I'm going to add like maybe a 50 or 100-foot radius there, maybe like a 100-foot radius there, etc. So again, that's a geometric type tool. So if I look at edit geometry, right over here is the fillet tool. So I'll click fillet. Again, when you don't know what to do, look to the command line window. You can define the radius. Right now it says 25, so I'll type R spacebar. And I'll type 50. Let's see if we can get 50 in here, and we can't, so we'll just do R again, and we'll type 25. That one works fine, so I'll go ahead and click. And here's the beauty of Civil 3D type stuff, as you can well imagine. Anything I do to the feature line, it updates automatically. And that should have actually also daylighted. We'll fix that in a second, hopefully. We'll do radius here. Let's try 50 over here. That should fit for this one. And then, there we go. Okay, and so as you can see, as you're making updates to the actual grading object, it updates automatically. Now, one of the other things I like to do is I actually like to take my grading group into my object viewer, just to see it in 3D, and that way I can actually kind of see it, make sure everything's working out okay. So I always right-click on that, choose Select, go to the object viewer, and then in here, you can kind of see, obviously, in 3D, kind of what this ditch is doing, right? That all looks good, and now, once I'm done making my grading type edits, now is when I would actually create a surface. So, okay, that's why I was saying wait to the kind of not the last minute, but just wait till you're ready to really actually plot it, do volume calculations, whatever it is you're trying to do, or show contours, and now it would actually kind of make a surface. So to do that, you simply right-click on the grading group, go to Properties here, and here's where you toggle on Automatic Surface Creation. You give it a name. It should usually match the grading group, but you don't have to. We'll go ahead and just click on Create 1 and 5 foot design, click OK here. Now, here's the key thing. So tessellation spacing and tessellation angle are very important. What they do is they basically affect how, if you have curves in your feature lines and grading objects, how do you want that to be basically converted to a surface? And because you can't have curves in a surface, you want to make this as tight as possible without really kind of making your file too big. 1 is usually a good enough distance for tessellation spacing as well as the angle difference here, okay? So I'll just pick 1, I'll click OK, and now I've got that surface in there, all right? Now I'm going to go ahead and change my shading in here to show shades of gray so we can kind of see how that looks. And of course, that's actually, it looks okay, but obviously I can't see the other surface. So here's what you want to do. So if my pure purpose was to just get contours to show a site plan, what I would then do is, I want to show proposed and existing. So I'm going to go ahead and here, I'm going to basically create a brand new surface. And I'm going to call this one FG for finished grade. And I'll go ahead and click OK, leave that on as my default. I'm going to go ahead and shut this surface off. This is my EG, and I have a style here, which you should always have too, is a no display type style. That's a quick way to do that. These are the actual contours that I use to create the surface. So let me just go ahead and just get rid of these. We'll just freeze those real quick. All right. And then what I'll do is I'll go to my FG here, and I will basically paste in by going to the edits here, right click, I'll paste surface, and we'll first start with the EG. Always start with the bigger one on the outside, and now that will pop up. And then I'll right-click on this here, and we'll paste in the ditch surface, and that will basically show me a completed surface. So now I can, of course, see exactly everything all together. And as you can see here, if I go ahead and just freeze my my grading objects, you'll see here that obviously the contours are all ready to go, and basically I'm ready to do my site plans. I could add labels, etc. So that's a quick way to kind of do a ditch. Again, you're seeing the dynamic nature of the grading objects in that even if I make a mistake and I don't do it properly the first time, just make changes using the feature line tools, and everything, of course, will update automatically. All right, let's look at another example here. Actually, I did in the wrong order, but we'll just do this one here first. I want to do a retaining wall. So this is just a quick, easy way to do a retaining wall, right? So basically, imagine here, I've got a retaining wall that I want to be at a flat elevation. So I'm just basically going to grab a contour. I'm going to make that a specific elevation, and then I'm going to do a stepped offset, and you'll basically see how easy this is to just get a quick little retaining wall. So I already have my 2D polyline right here, right? So you can see right here in the, in this view, it's at 0, right? Again, if I select this here, hover over the grip, if you look at the, the status bar, it says 0. All right, so there are a couple ways to do this, but this one does not, I don't need to turn this into a feature line. This is how easy this is. I'm going to actually just use a regular AutoCAD offset tool. I'm going to offset this by 0.01. The reason I'm doing that is feature lines, to make a surface, you cannot have lines or feature lines, break lines, or whatever right on top of each other. They have to have some offset. 0.01, which is 100th, is good enough, and it's not going to mess up my volume calculations if I have to do anything, or contours. That's pretty, it's pretty insignificant. So I'll go ahead and just click on my polyline here, and I'll just offset it right there. So now I've got 2 polylines. Now this one here, I want this to be incorporated into a brand new surface. So I'm going to actually create a brand new surface here. I'll call this retaining wall. We'll just abbreviate retaining wall. And I don't want this to be displayed. I don't really care, because I'm going to basically paste this into my finished ground surface that you see right there. We'll click OK, and I'll make sure that's on Rebuild Automatic. And we'll put this on Rebuild Automatic as well. I will paste in this empty surface. I already have EG pasted in there, so we'll paste this in. Whoops, I did not mean to do that. We'll right click here, and we'll paste in my retaining wall. Again, nothing's going to have. Oh, yeah, that's right. You have to actually have data in it. That's fine. We'll just we'll do it afterwards. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put this one. I'm going to put this polyline right here at an elevation. So the way I find that out is, let's say I want this contour to be where the retaining wall needs to be, right? So I'll just start the line command. Like I said, if I hover over here, look at your status bar, it's 116 right there on the bottom. So I'm going to put this polyline, the top one, at 116. So I'll just go to the properties palette, 116, and as you can see here, that polyline is now at 116. All right, again, this is why it's nice to have this 3D view. You don't always have to have it on, but it's nice to see it while you're doing your design. I'm going to actually add that to my retaining wall surface as a standard break line. So I'll right click on here, add, and I don't have to give it a name. I will toggle on supplementing factors, because if I don't, I'm going to get some pretty big triangles. So I want this to add points. It's not going to add points to the polyline, just surface points every 5 feet. That should be good enough. Click OK. And now I'll pick that break line. And now that's in the surface. Again, nothing's displayed, so you're not going to see it. Now I actually will add that to the other surface. So let's go ahead and expand my FG here. And we'll expand definition, and we'll right click on this, and we'll paste in the retaining wall. And as you can see, this is starting to update automatically. In fact, I'll go ahead and just simply change this to a shades of gray, and now you can kind of see it updating. All right. All right, now I need to add this as a retaining wall. Well, basically, if I was just targeting existing ground, all I have to do is drape this to the existing ground, add it to this surface, to the retaining wall surface, and I'm done. So what I'll do is I'll basically go here to the feature line, create feature line from objects. We'll grab that 0.01 offset line. If I wanted to give it a name, I could, but you don't have to. It doesn't really matter. If I want to plot this, I could do the same thing. But again, I don't have to. I'll go ahead and just say erase existing, assign elevations, click OK. I want to target EG. Yes, intermediate grade breakpoints. Click OK here. And now I have a feature line that is basically draped all the way on existing ground. And now I will add that as a break line to this surface here. I don't need supplementing or anything. I'll just click OK. And now I have a break line. And now I have a retaining wall. All right. That's simple and really simple, really easy. Okay. So these are just some quick, easy ways. Like, again, if you're not doing quarter modeling where you can actually attach a retaining wall as an assembly or sub-assembly, here you can just quickly, easily do that. And again, I could, if that needs to be a certain bottom elevation of something, then you just define the elevation, all right? And you can actually then edit the feature line as you need to. All right, so that's a quick, easy way to just kind of get a retaining wall in there. Any questions so far? I haven't looked at the chat panel or anything.
I don't see any questions so far in the question box. Everybody, remember that this is a good time to ask your questions, so please feel free to write them on the question box.
All right, so the next thing I want to show you is pond, and maybe if you had a weir, a pond with a weir. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about how to do that. Again, this is a pretty straightforward one, but again, the key thing is you actually have to start with a feature line. So let's say I kind of just drew the shape in here. Okay, whatever size, whatever kind of pond that you want it to be is, obviously we just draw the shape of the pond. All right, now this one here I drew obviously incorrectly initially, but I'm just going to go with it, and I'm going to show you guys how to actually kind of make certain edits to feature lines and so on. That way you can have an idea of if you make a mistake, it's not a big deal. All right, so again, this is at 0 elevation. If I look at my average elevation here, I've got 514, 548, but we'll put this top of pond, let's say at 530, okay? All right, so the first thing I'll do is I'll just go to feature line here, create feature line from objects. We'll go ahead and click on the feature line itself, press enter. Let's say I want, and for the top of pond, what I usually do is I do like to actually name it. So I'll just call this one pond top, and I do actually will put in parentheses usually the actual elevation, because it kind of helps me kind of remember what I actually put it at without having to kind of snap to it or whatever. I will give it a style. Let's say I want to actually plot this one. I don't have the plot one in here, but I'll just do grading ditch. That's fine. We'll erase the existing one. I want to assign elevation set at 530, and I'll click OK. So in this case, I don't want to obviously drape it to the surface. I want to click on elevation and type in the actual elevation that I want this to be. We'll click OK here. And as you can see, now it's actually in there. Now, this feature line, of course, you're not going to have a pond that has a sharp vertex like that or like that as well. So we need to kind of fix this. All right, so again, select the feature line and then go to the Edit Geometry tool, and we'll go ahead and go to Fillet right here. All right, so my radius now is 50. Let's say actually I want to make this a radius of 25, so we'll just change that. Again, all I'm doing is hovering over this, and it's basically picking that one spot, and now I'm able to make that nicely smooth. Now, let's say I want to expand this pond so it goes up a little bit here. Let's say I have to make it bigger because the size, after filleting, it wasn't the exact size. So I've seen many people do is they'll explode this, they'll modify using AutoCAD tools. You don't need to do that, because one of the things a lot of people don't realize is that, you know, right now if I were to make this grip edit here, notice how it doesn't maintain tangency. So that is a problem. I actually kind of wish there was a way to do that, but it doesn't do that. But all I have to do is basically delete these curves and redo the curves or redo the fillet. So a lot of people don't realize that there's a tool right here. If I go to the Edit Curve tool, I'll click that. A lot of people say, okay, well, I want to edit this to be 0. So they'll click on it, and then they think, okay, I'll try 0 here and see if that works. And it doesn't really work, and so you can't do that. But one of the things they don't notice, again, what I always say, I've said it like 10 times already, when you don't know what to do, look to the command line window. Select Feature Line Curve or Edit or Delete. So D space bar, and then I'll just go ahead and pick on, I'll delete this one right there. And notice how immediately I'm just basically deleting those curves. And so that's a really quick, without having to explode the feature line and all that good stuff. Now I can go in here and I can resize the pond. You know, it does honor AutoCAD tracking. So if I have O tracking and turned on with extension, I can just make that bigger that way. However, I need to do this here, etc. And then all I do is I simply go back to the fillet command here, and I'll just refillet them. So you don't have to go through and explode it and get rid of it. There are many ways to do that in here. Another really cool trick is if you hold the Shift key down, all right, and pick your grips, you make these what's called hot grips. This is an AutoCAD thing, not a Civil 3D thing. So this works with AutoCAD objects. That way, when I go ahead and pick this and resize it, notice how it maintains that it keeps those arcs. Now, I know it's not maintaining tangency there, but I basically just, you know, I would just go perpendicular or make sure that I'm actually going at an extension so that it automatically is not going to mess it up, that kind of thing, okay? I'd probably actually pick the other grip right there. But you get the idea. Basically, you can just maintain that geometry by simply choosing hot grips and then moving it that way as well, all right? Okay, so now I've got my top of pond here. Now I want to basically put the berm in, put the bottom of pond, put my daylighting and all that good stuff. So again, this one here I believe is already in a site. So usually, obviously, you want it to make sense. I'm going to actually name this pond here and click OK. And I'll expand this, right-click New, and I'll create a brand new pond grading group. For whatever reason, it worked fine in this drawing. All right, so now I'll go to grading and then grading creation tools. And then it's got the grading group already. It doesn't have an EG, so I'll go ahead and select the target surface, which I have right there. Click OK. And the first thing I want to do is my berm. So I'll go ahead and click on grade to distance. We'll click create grading. And then we'll go ahead and click on that. Which side? We'll go to the outside. Yes, for the entire length. And now I want a distance of, let's say I want a 10-foot berm. And I want a grade of 0%. So I'll say G for grade, 0, enter. And now I've got that done. Now I want to do the bottom of pond. So there are a couple ways to do that. If you know the bottom elevation, you could do that. But let's say I want to go grade to relative elevation. So I want to go negative 10 feet, let's say, from the top of pond here. So we'll go ahead and just click on this here. That's a pretty deep pond. That's okay. We'll pick the grading side here. And then I want to do the entire length. Yes. And I want to say negative 10. And then I want to do a slope of 4 to 1. And there's my bottom of pond. Now, again, as I mentioned before, actually, I'll just leave it. I won't do the infill just yet, and you'll see what happens. And then we'll go ahead and click on this here. We'll go to grade to surface. And then we'll click on create grading. And then we'll go ahead and click on the outside here. Yes, for the entire length. For a slope of 4 to 1 and cut. A slope of 4 to 1 and fill. And then as you can see here, it's going to basically create the grading objects. And you can tell by the color, this is red, that's green. And of course, if I right click select this here, and then take that into the object viewer, you'll notice that it's showing all the grading. But of course, there's nothing in the middle yet because you have to do that infill. All right, infills are very simple. All you have to do is click on the drop down here for create grading, create infill. You hover. You don't have to snap or anything. Just hover in that area. It finds it automatically. You click, press enter, and now I have that closed. All right. Now, let's say I wanted to actually see what the volume of this is here. Maybe I need to lower the pond because I've got too much fill or too much cut or whatever it is. So let's go ahead and create a surface first to do that. All right. So I'll right click on pond. We'll go to properties here. And we'll toggle on automatic surface creation. Give it a pond, the pond's name. That's fine. Click OK. And remember what I said. Set this to 1 and set this to 1 as well. And I will toggle on my volume-based surface as EG and then click OK here. And so now I actually have a surface. And here's how you see the volume calculations. All you have to do is right click on the grading group, go to properties. And then if you go to the properties of that, you'll see right here, I have a net fill of 1,689. All right, so if I wanted to lower that, because I wanted to have, let's say, I'd rather have some cut than fill, I could do that very easily. Here's the thing. Actually, I'm going to set this to no display just so it speeds up the viewing. So we'll go to properties here, and we'll set this to no display. So again, the great thing about the Civil 3D objects is you just simply select the source feature line, and then you raise or lower right here. And then I'll lower this by, let's say, -2, press enter, and everything, notice, and obviously keep an eye out on the 3D view, it'll automatically update with the grading and everything. And now I can go back into this and go to properties, and I can see what I have for balance. I've got a cut of 8,000. I probably should have done 1 foot. You get the idea. Basically, you can balance it however you need to, and you can do whatever you need to do there, okay? All right, so that's really simple how to do a pond. Again, if I wanted to edit any of the geometry, you could do that very easily, and all the stuff would update automatically, okay? Now, let's say I wanted to add some sort of weir here, all right? So this is actually a very simple process. So the first thing you would do is I'm going to go ahead and draw a feature line from scratch. I'm going to make sure that it goes into the same exact site. This is key, all right? So I'll go ahead and just click OK here. I'll go ahead and just snap nearest here. Let's say I want a 5-foot weir, all right? So I'll go ahead and just snap nearest here. Notice how again, when you don't know what to do, look to the command line window. It's prompting you. It says, hey, the elevation is 528. Is that okay? And the answer is yes. It basically grabbed the elevation of the top of pond. I'll press enter, and we'll just do a shift right click perpendicular. Again, it says specify elevation because it knows it's 528. Press enter, and now I have that. Now, here's the cool thing that happens. So because it's in the same site and it's actually like on top of those, it's automatically figuring out, hey, I actually need to grade that as well because I have that additional point that I need to actually grade for. Let me actually turn this off as well just to kind of speed up the view here as well. So we'll just set that to no display. And now we can just kind of see that work. All right, so I'm putting that over here. All right, so now I want to actually do, let's say I'm going to go down at 2 feet. Let's go. I shall go down. We'll go down 2 feet. So we'll go down 8 at a 4 to 1. We'll do a stepped offset here real quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and just close this out. So here's the cool thing. I'll just go ahead and select that new feature line that I just created, and I'll do a stepped offset. Again, when you don't know what to do, look to the command line window. It says specify the offset distance. Well, I'm going to go, if I go at 2 feet, at 4 to 1, that's 8 feet. So I'll just type 8, enter, and we'll pick the side. And now it says, what's the slope? I want to go down -4 to go down a slope, right? Press enter, and then press enter again. And you'll notice automatically everything updates, as you can see right there. That's really cool. Now I want to go, let's say I want to do a 5 foot wide weir. All right, so I'll just do a stepped offset here. And I'm going to do a distance of 5, press enter. Pick our side. We'll do a grade of 0, press enter, enter again. Did I pick the wrong one? I think I picked the wrong one, didn't I? I did. So I picked the wrong one here. So let's pick that one there, and we'll just delete that. Again, not a big deal because obviously it's all dynamic. And we'll go ahead and select this one here. And whoops, I got the whole thing. Let's just pick the feature line. We'll do a stepped offset, and we'll do this into 5, and pick the side. Grade of 0. And then we will do this last one here, of course, just going up. Stepped offset. And we'll go 8. And we'll go the side. And we want to do a slope. Press S spacebar. +4. Press enter. You can already see kind of in the other view, it's actually updating automatically. And that's how you can quickly do a weir. And you can't, I mean, that's just fantastic. And of course, it updates everything, right? Because it's updating where it daylights and all that good stuff. Now, again, this is a pretty exaggerated pond. You're not going to get ponds like this. But I like to do that just to show you that what you can do with that, okay? So that's a pond with a weir, all right? Again, really not that difficult. As you can see, I'm getting all this stuff done within the hour, all right? I show the retaining wall. All right, we're getting close here. I only have about 10 minutes left. So one of the things I do want to show you is that grading groups, if they're in the same site, will actually talk to each other. And this is a really fantastic functionality. This was that I think about in 2008, I think, Civil 3D. But a lot of people just don't realize that this functionality is available. All right, so I call it like grading group kind of communication, where they actually talk to each other. All right, so again, they have to live in the same site. So I already kind of set this up, so I don't have to spend too much time on it. But as you can see here, I'll show my 3D view. Right, I've got really just 2 basic pads here. Okay, they just have a basic fill slope. One's at one elevation, one's at another elevation. Right, again, if I start the line command, keep an eye on the status bar. I don't know why it turned off there. Let's turn that back. Actually, it is on. That's weird how it's not showing it. Let me do that real quickly here. Let's toggle that off, toggle it on. Oh, it's up here. I don't know why that did that, but let's try and fix maybe it's something with the webinar. How strange. So for some reason, my status bar is up here now, but that's okay. Just keep an eye. I've actually never seen that before. Maybe it's the webinar causing that, but right over here is my coordinates. So I'll just start the line command. Like I said, just start any command that requires you snap. And notice how that's at 585. And this is at 582. So they're at 2 separate elevations. And again, these are dynamically kind of linked because, of course, you know, this is just one source feature line that just daylights. But watch what happens and keep an eye on the 3D view. So these are going to obviously have to interact. If I were to move this building pad closer to this one here, you would hope that it would, you know, how would you calculate the slopes that intersect? It's very difficult, of course, because they're going to existing ground. If it was proposed, you could calculate it fairly easily, whatever grade it was at. But here's a really cool thing. I'm just going to go ahead and move this. So I'm going to move this so that it kind of goes into that grading a little bit. You'll notice immediately, look how it actually updates the grading objects. Again, they have to live in the same site. All right, if they live in the same site, they will interact with each other. So notice how it's automatically doing that. Now, here's the cool thing. If I were to go into this grading group and then make an actual surface here, and we'll set this to 1, set that to 1, hit OK here. You know, that actual surface is what you get. I mean, that's the really cool aspect of this, is that it all interacts with each other. And so basically the grading groups create a surface that's supposed to be exactly what it's supposed to be. Now, again, imagine trying to calculate when those slopes intersect. It's almost impossible, right? You basically, it'd be you'd probably do one surface, another one, and then clip it. But this just happens automatically. So that's a really nice aspect that a lot of people don't realize, that grading groups, as long as these are in the same site. Again, if you look at the properties here, these grading groups are next, they're in the same site. They have to be the same site and the same grading group, and then they will interact with each other. Now, this is a really simple example. I'll be totally honest with you here. If it gets complicated, just save often, because it may crash on you. It does sometimes do that, okay? All right. The last example I'll show you here, and then we'll open up for questions. And I'm not going to really do anything with this. I just want to show you how kind of you can do this. So this is a subdivision, and you'll see here I've got a corridor model running this way. And basically what I've done is I will actually, I have this edge of where the back of the sidewalk is, or the back of the boulevard, and I extract that feature line from the corridor model, and then I do lot grading down here, and then I tie back into existing ground. I even have a pond here and so on. And I'll open up this drawing just so you can kind of see this. I'm not going to go through it because it took a little bit of time to go through this. So, but I just want to kind of show that you can get as fancy as you need to with grading objects combined with, corridor modeling and so on. All right. And those blocks that you see, I'll talk about those in a second as well, because they are kind of cool. They come with Civil 3D. A lot of people don't realize that they're available. And this, and of course, obviously visualization, that's a kind of a whole other topic. But so basically what I've done here, and I'll set this to wireframe so that we can kind of see this, because right now it's set to realistic. That's why it's showing all the rendering. And we'll go to 2D wireframe. And so what I've done is, let me change my corridor model real quickly here to show a code set style with all the codes. All right. That's not doing what I want. Let me do it again. That's what it is. All right. Well, usually I want it to show the links. The links should be showing up, but for some reason they're not. That's okay. I'll just show it to you kind of like this way. So here you can kind of see the corridor model, right? And basically, so when you create a corridor model, it makes feature lines. So this right here is a feature line, right? And as you can see, I've already extracted it. So there's that feature line right there. In fact, we'll do 2 views here real quickly so we can kind of see this in 2D as well. If you're not familiar with 3D that well, if I want to get this back to the top view, just simply click on this right here, go to top. Now we're back to like 2D normal view, all right? And now this one here, I'll just keep in 3D. So as you can see, what I've done is basically I have extracted this feature line that comes off of this corridor model right there. Where are we here? And then all I did, you can see it kind of goes all the way around. So this corridor model I did first, of course, and then I just did lot grading. That's all I did. So this right here, this is a grading object, and this is a grading object. So I go up, down, just to do sloping this way, and then down this way to let the site go that way. Now, is it exact with the building pads? No, it's just kind of basic, just to kind of see how if I want the sites to drain, see how it's going to look, and see if it'll kind of work with my initial design. Then I would do probably granulated type modeling. But as you can see here, you can really get it so that it does exactly what you want it to do. And of course, if again, a whole other kind of webinar possibly maybe is a rendering and how to get visualization done if you really wanted to see visualization real quickly. All right. These houses, just so you know, notice how you can actually see them in one view, they look a certain way, and in the other view, they look a different way. So if you look over here, you're seeing that in the 2D, quote unquote, 2D view, they look like a regular block that I'd want to show, like the outline of a building. But in 3D, they actually are showing a 3D building. So these are completely available as part of Civil 3D. And just to show them, I'll just end on this and then we'll go to the Q&A. If you go to the tool palettes here and you right click and go to Civil Multi-View Blocks, all right, and then go to Building Footprints, these right here are all the multi-view blocks, all right? So if I want to do like an apartment one, And I'll kind of put this right over here. Notice how in 2D it looks like just a regular old apartment building with certain dimensions or whatever. Then in 3D, however, it actually looks like it does when you rotate the view this way. So if I were to zoom out here, this will probably be at 0 elevation. You'll have to excuse my machine. It's kind of a little bit kind of chugging along here. But there's the apartment building in 3D, right? So it's a multi-view block. It's basically a carryover from architectural desktop, AutoCAD architecture, and we get it basically included in Civil 3D, all right? So again, you can make your own too. There are ways to do that, but you can just use out of the box just to kind of make your thing look kind of pretty. So, all right, and that is it. Any questions?
Thank you, Seth. Yes, we have questions. And you guys can keep writing your questions as we go along in the Q&A section. The first question is, can you make leveling?
Can you make leveling?
Yes. Do you need clarification about that?
You'll have to expand on that. Can you make leveling? I don't know exactly what that means.
Okay.
Sorry.
The person that made the question, can you expand on that on the chat, on the question box, and then we'll go back to that. There's another, sorry, very tough to feed all the grading topics in 1 hour, great presentation, but he wants to bring up the split point resolution.
Screen point resolution.
Yeah. The last feature line made as you mentioned, but it is also determined by the site properties under the feature line crossing. So, split point resolution.
Is that in the questionnaire?
It is in the question, but I don't see a question. This is something to consider in user organizes the feature lines within the site, but I guess he's like making a statement more than asking a question about the split point.
Okay, I can't see the questionnaire palette for some reason. I don't know why.
Okay. There's another question. For the grading objects on my screen, the diamond always shows very large. Is there a way to show it smaller?
Yes, so that's a kind of a common thing, and you probably, if you've ever done grading, you probably aren't noticing mine are very big because I've changed mine. So let me do a quick little all kind of thing. So you'll notice here, like if I zoom out and do a regen, in most versions of Civil 3D, the diamond will then just get humongous. So that's actually, I guess in this one, yeah, I do actually have it set up. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so this is perfect. So you notice how when I zoom into this diamond, it's a percentage of the screen. So I've had this happen many times with the users. They'll just zoom out accidentally, like way big, and then all of a sudden their diamonds are like this big, huge thing. So how do you basically change that? Well, that's very simple. And by default, I would actually set your template up to have this set up this way because I don't like the percentage of screen. So just select, you're going to do this to the cut one and the fill one. So select the one first, and then go to Edit Cut Grading Style. Right here, I set the percentage of screen. So I'll just set it to fixed size and just figure out a size that works for you. Whatever scale you want it to be set to. 5 is usually pretty good. And I'll do the same thing for this one here as well. So right-click, Edit Grading Style, and percentage of screen. So we'll just do fixed size, and 5 is usually good enough. That way you see something. Actually, was that too big? That's too big. Yeah, so let's actually make that. We'll do that one here. Edit grading style. Fixed size of 1. Hit apply. 0.5. You just play around with it until you find the one you like. Once you do it once, it's done. So that's how you can kind of do that, which is actually a nice little way of doing it. Good,
good, good. There's another question. How did you get all those materials to look like that in the drawing?
So you're probably talking about the one over here. So that's, like I said, that'll probably be like another presentation I might do. But just to give you an idea how simple it is with some of the object types. So the first one I'll show you is just the surface, because the surface is really, a lot of people don't realize, if you want to do visualization, like you want to show up to your boss and say, hey, look what I did here, and look at this really cool, plot that I have that shows everything in 3D. So the surface themselves, if you select the surface, right-click, and go to Surface Properties, this right here, you can actually define a render material. So if I want this to now be, let's say, asphalt, I'll hit OK here, and now it's going to look like asphalt. So that's a quick, easy way to do the surfaces like that, okay? But as far as the corridor model goes, actually, I'm going to close this out. Let me open it back up again. That way it'll probably be faster to just do that. So the corridor model is a little bit different. And everything in the corridor model, the way you get the corridor model to show a certain way is with something called the code set style. The code set style tells it how to display all the different codes that are in a quarter model or an assembly or a sub-assembly, etc. So you have point, links, and shape codes. And let me actually zoom in here so you can kind of talking about once this kind of wakes up a little bit. So if I zoom into my, I don't know why that's, there we go. You can kind of see right here, this quarter model is automatically showing asphalt, concrete, and grass. So basically the way it works is the quarter model, these are links. Links go across longitudinally the quarter model, right? The alignment and the profile. So if you go to the code set style here real quickly, and again, I may do a presentation on this. That way it'll actually, we can show it in detail. But basically all the links have to have a render material associated to them. All right, that's how you can kind of do it. Again, that's a quick answer. But like I said, maybe in the next presentation, I'll just do that in more detail. Any other questions, or was there, anyone expand on the other question?
Thank you. Thank you. I don't see any more questions popping up. So I think that's all. Okay. So we're going to wrap up because it's already the top of the hour. Yeah.
If you have questions you want to ask afterwards, you can just email me or email, you know, our default email, and we can elaborate.
Yes, we can put maybe that on the screen if you have a chance. So that they have it once more. Thank you everybody for attending the webinar. Thank you, Seth. That content was amazing. Actually, some people on the question box have been pricing the presentation. So thank you so much for a great presentation. Thank you guys for joining us. And like Seth said, you can email us or call us with more questions. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.